Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is I, Emily Sophia, aka M Lady Sophia, here to break down for you guys the second episode of AMC's Preacher. We are indeed on season 1, episode 2, and the title is C. So, spoiler alert before I dive into the mad thick of things, as I shall be bearing all in this review, and I mentioned this in my Game of Thrones review from yesterday, but for the foreseeable future, I anticipate that I will probably be doing my Preacher reviews on Mondays as opposed to Sunday nights because it airs live pretty late where I am at, and I am trying to make sure that I do not become an insomniac, so that's kind of what is happening in my neck of the woods. But anyways, let's talk the latest of Preacher. Of course, if you are hopping onto this review for the first time, you didn't catch my review of the pilot, there's a link in the description for you. But I also want to let you know that no, I have not read the comics, at least not yet. So I am told by many that it is well worth checking out, and chances are the more I fall in love with this show, which is inevitably going to be the case, the more I'm going to want to get into the literary canon and see what kind of madness is ensuing there. But I haven't read the comics, and I think that in some ways that maybe put me at a slight disadvantage as far as certain mysterious character introductions go. Namely the 2 points of confusion I think that is probably shared by myself and any non-comic readers is the cowboy from that little 19th century vignette that we got at the beginning of the episode for that cold opening. I have seen the name Saint of Killers going around. That does not mean anything to me yet, and so I'm not going to say that's a spoiler because I don't even know what the connotation there is. I assume that is referring to our gunslinging fellow, who as of yet still remains kind of ambiguous. And as well as the character who I don't even think that he was mentioned by name in this episode, but my understanding is that the eviction crew that we saw taking down that house on pretty short order, leader of the pack's name is Odin Quincannon. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but yeah. Apparently he is the proprietor of Quincannon Meat and Power Company. So once again, it doesn't seem overtly connected to stuff that's going on in the present down over at Annville, but still something to get excited about / be interested in. And I think that with those kinds of characters, it's probably easier to be immediately enthused because you as a reader know where things are going and have some of those insights. Whereas I'm like, oh cool, there's a cowboy. Oh cool, here's this guy who can freaking demolish a house and do whatever he wants. Okay, that is apparently, I mean, this for me is just kind of world building stuff. I know that I'm not expected to know everything yet, and so I guess I'm kind of okay with it, with just being like, oh, I don't know what that is, I'm going to find out. I guess I have a lot of faith in the showrunners and crew, but you know, what I do like about this series and the ambiguousness of these new characters is that I don't feel like the show is just holding me by the hand and walking me gently down the sidewalk, making sure I don't stumble into the street. It kind of just takes you on a ride, you know? And I sort of appreciate that because there are a lot of shows that I can't get into seriously because there is not some effort required on my part to invest and to think and to ask questions and to analyze. A lot of shows that are super exposition heavy, and Preacher is the complete and total opposite of that. I think there's so much that has a question mark or 10 floating above it that Sure, it could be frustrating potentially, but I guess it's something that I am able to appreciate. So I'd be curious to know what you guys think as comic book readers. Of course, I would request that you don't overtly spoil anything, but also for you non-comic book readers like myself, how did this stuff strike you? Yeah, I have to say that as far as the cowboy stuff goes, again, not really sure of anything yet, but it's clear that this guy has seen hell and has seen the fact that, you know, what I assume is the American frontier. I think that's where they're at. I'm not sure exactly. It is no fantasy land. It is no nirvana. It is no paradise whatsoever. When he meets up with all these settlers and they offer him dinner and sit down by the fire with him, Papa What's-His-Face is like, yeah, check out all this stuff, like the victor go the spoils, and Cowboy Man doesn't seem to be having any of that, and it's made abundantly apparent why he is not when we cut to a very disturbing scene of a bunch of Indians who are hung and have been scalped and mutilated in various ways. So yeah, definitely some grotesqueries are going on, and I guess in that sense it kind of fits in with what's happening in the present. Annville's not a very pretty place if you look too closely. But yeah, there's something I was going to say. Oh, the score, the music at the very beginning during that whole sequence was absolutely terrifying. I felt scared, like not even knowing what was coming. It was just this shrill, rising, hysterical, like, I don't know where all of this is leading, but it seems like something very bad is going to happen. And then Cowboy Man ends up in a place called Ratwater, which I think I saw in a review that the whiskey that Cassidy got or somebody had over in Annville was from Ratwater. I don't know if that's incorrect. You can, by all means, let me know if that is the case. But yeah, guess we'll see what happens there. I don't have much to add. Meanwhile, we see that Jesse is doing his best to hold down the fort, getting some good old baptisms done out on the front lawn of the church. Once again, the church reader board has been messed with, which I think is going to be kind of a recurrent thing in these forthcoming episodes as we get these establishing shots of the church. But yeah, so we even see that Eugene is being baptized, and I think for him, he hopes that he's going to be able to turn over a new leaf. And then, of course, we see that the two mystery spy men are checking out the scene, trying to case the joint and see what's going on. And they're a little bit perplexed as to what's happening with the preacher. And then, of course, Tulip decides that she's going to bathe in the holy water as well. Now, one very, very minor complaint that I have is I want to know what Tulip's deal is. What is this job that she has in store for Jesse? I feel like we're beating around the bush a little bit. I am ready to have my eyes open to whatever it is that she is all about, because she is very insistent that she knows exactly who Jesse is, that she knows exactly what he's going to do, and she is just going to torture him and pester him and drive him to the precipice until finally she gets what she wants, or rather, he gets what she knows he wants. And I just want to know what that is, because we do get some little bits and pieces of time with Tulip, but I still don't really know who she is and what she's about. I know that she is just as much of an agent of chaos as Cassidy is, but Cassidy is actually, he's making himself useful, saving Jesse Custer's life from certain imminent chainsaw death, cleaning up the entire church by moonlight, and he's doing some good stuff. Meanwhile, Tulip continues to torment and capture and imprison and seduce him. So, very interesting stuff. Kind of got two devils on your shoulders. I think, well, there's two devils, but there's also a wee little bit of an angel in the character of Emily. And I don't just think that because I am an Emily. She is kind of she really deserves to be the preacher of this church, I think. But, you know, now that Jesse Custer is Mr. Miracle Man, who knows what's going to ensue. So anyways, getting back to business, Emily is definitely trying to make a concerted effort along with Jesse to put their church on the map and to reach the community and make cappuccinos, but clearly the 119-year-old vampire, is that the correct age that I heard? He knows a little bit more about coffee making than poor Emily does, but yeah, he's feeling a little antsy, making some trouble, pretty much sleeping all day, showing up, reacting to things, judging Jesse, again, saving his life. So while it would seem from Emily's perspective that this guy is just a royal waste of space, we know that there's a bit more to his story as well. And I, much like Tulip, want to know more about this guy, and there's been a lot of time spent talking to and about Jesse Custer, and we can kind of see what's going on inside of his head. I think that they've done a really good job so far of showing us Jesse's experience of the world, how he feels, how he is thinking when he is reaching his boiling point and is ready to break and unleash himself on all of mankind. You know, like I'm getting a good sense for what it kind of feels like to be in the position of Jesse Custer, but there's much more that we have to learn about this Unholy Trinity. Can I say that? Is that a thing in the comics already? Because they are the Unholy Trinity. I'm calling it now. We'll see how proud I am of myself as time goes on. But yeah, so, oh, and also, I forgot to mention, so I think that the name of the two spy guys is Fior and de Blanc. I don't know if that's correct. I'm trying to pick up on names faster than I normally do with shows. I think that Game of Thrones has beat it into me, like just the the practice of trying to cling on to these names and know them and internalize them before it's too late and everything is meaningless. And I'm going to get a little bit ahead of myself, but I have to ask. So I saw a couple reviews that were positing that the scene with Fior and de Blanc and Sheriff Root was a flashback. But I kind of understood that as being in the present. The fact of the matter being that what it appeared Cassidy had done was somehow supernaturally, mystically undone. That's what I'm picking up, and that's the kind of thing I would expect of the show already too. So let me know what you guys think, I guess. If there's a consensus among you all, let me know. But anyway, so we come to discover after Cassidy meets Eugene for the very first time and calls him Arseface, actually. He apparently tried to commit suicide with a bullet to the face, but when he and Sheriff Root are walking outside of the church, somebody calls either Eugene or his father a murderer. Now, I thought that that was actually directed to the sheriff, but the way that he reacted was kind of protective, like of his son, so I think that maybe that accusation was aimed at Eugene, but again, mysteries of Annville are everywhere. And yeah, and Jesse, in his attempt to check up on all of the townsfolk and be the kind of preacher that these people need him to be, he meets up with a guy who I believe is named Linus. And this man has some very sick fantasies of which he is completely and utterly unrepentant. I, having grown up in the church and continuing to be part of a church body, you see that kind of stuff all the time. You see those justifications, you see those excuses. Oh man, that stuff runs rampant. And actually, believe it or not, I don't know if I've ever told you guys this in my reviews, if you've watched some of the other videos, but my dad is a pastor, as it turns out, so I have kind of a fun perspective on all of this mayhem. I kind of love it. But yeah, so we see that, like, poor Jesse is just absolutely foaming at the mouth. He can barely even hear this man, and he is just ready to go into this berserker fury, and then things turn into an awkward hug, and there you go. But Jesse continues, of course, to be haunted by the school bus for the rest of the episode, and you know, the wheels on the bus go round and round, and Jesse's wheels go round and round, and he eventually decides that they're gonna do things right, and he's gonna get an actual repentance out of this man. Things go better than expected. Yeah, and so a lot of this episode, as far as things with Jesse Custer go, are spent exploring his powers and kind of this concept of God's will versus human agency. But now the lines are officially blurred in this little Venn diagram because, you know, we see Jesse as this man who has been imbued with divine godly powers, and he believes that he is trying to do God's will, but now that he can kind of speak certain things into being, you know, it's like he's not actually God, but he's doing some kind of godly things. So where is all this coming from, and what is he actually meant to do with these abilities? Is it to be one of the good guys? Or what does that look like, I suppose? Because chances are he could stay one of the good guys if he's not wearing his preacher getup. But what exactly does that mean? And of course, he's probably going to end up getting roped into Tulip's job, and so we're going to have to see what constitutes being a good guy when you got powers like these, and you're still kind of finding your footing. It's a bit of a superhero origin story of sorts. This vigilante superhero, I don't know, kind of Daredevil, except totally not. So yeah, we do get to see what's going on with Q, M, and P. That's a Quinn Cannon meet and power. Still mysteriousness is afoot. And meanwhile, while Jesse and Emily are trying to go and canvass their local community, trying to, like the little suggestion box, how can we make our church better for you? That's the point at which Tulip once again makes her presence known. I love the line when she's like, Jesus, take your wheel. Very, very clever stuff. I dig it. There's a lot of fun wordplay in this episode. I think that the humor of this episode it wasn't superior to the pilot necessarily. It just keeps getting better. Can I say that? That's what I'm going to say. And yeah, we get a cool little character moment between Jesse and Cassidy as they're kind of talking about what is God's plan, and is there truly something worse than being boring? Which is a conversation I love. And then things also turn to The Big Lebowski. Apparently Jesse is into that, as he states before he is promptly knocked out of his gourd by a rather terrible cocktail from Cassidy. But Cassidy thinks that The Big Lebowski is overrated. I feel like this has kind of become a metaphor for their their lives and their differences, and who knows, maybe the two of them their thoughts about The Big Lebowski will coincide as their paths continue to intertwine. But I like how the two of them are kind of like, it's like the hypocrite versus the loser. That's sort of how they're pitted against each other. And Cassidy claims, at least he lives an honest life. Kind of like what Tulip is telling Jesse. The idea is that he's lying to himself. He's lying with everything that he's doing. And by attempting to walk the straight and narrow, he is simply deceiving himself to no end. So that's kind of interesting to see. And this, of course, leads to the moment where Fiore, I really don't know how it's pronounced, and de Blanc, they show up to perform a creepy little ritual involving a coffee can and an Irish nursery rhyme lullaby thing, and yeah, stuff gets a little bizarre. And then it's time for a little baby Texas Chainsaw mini massacre in the church. very brutal stuff. It was very tough for me to watch. I mean, I can tolerate some degree of violence, but there were a few moments where I was like, ooh. Yeah, I don't know what it is, because I can usually stomach very stylized violence pretty well. And the lighting was very, very dark, like dark blues and shadows and stuff, so you can kind of like trick your mind into ignoring certain things, but you want to take in the visual effects and the insanity of it all, because it's so smooth, it's so live, these fight sequences, for as horrific and atrocious as they are very beautifully wrought, I gotta say. And it's cool that Cassidy does actually end up coming to the preacher's rescue, and ends up taking care of everything. You know, he is no trouble at all, as he would say. And then we get a brief moment with Tulip at the Toadvine whorehouse, evidently. She's talking with a lady named Mo about her sick uncle, and then she's like, ha ha ha, I'm just kidding, he didn't ride into a pet shop and kill 2 little kids and a billy goat. Aren't I hilarious? So Tulip at this point is a little scarier than she is welcoming, but I'm interested. I'm keeping the door open. I want to know more about this woman, and apparently she's a good gambler too, so what do you know? Yeah, let's see. So Jesse also visits Mrs. Loca and her daughter Tracy, who has sustained a very severe head trauma of some sort. And Jesse tries to say, you know, the light of the Lord will reach you. And this woman, she does not mince words in saying that to her. Words are meaningless, as is the casserole that he brought over at the request of Emily. And it's interesting because despite her assertion that words are powerless, we very quickly see with the whole situation with Linus towards the end that is so far from the case. And we're left with a very interesting cliffhanger at the end of the episode as well, because we don't know what the implications of Jesse telling this girl to open her eyes will be. You know, I'm thinking in my mind, like, how do you game the system? Like, could you make a very specific command to make sure that when you do wake her up, something horrible isn't gonna happen? But again, you know, he is green and inexperienced in this area of his life. He is just beginning to flex his godlike muscles, and I think it's safe to say that some mistakes are going to be made at the onset of this phase of Jesse's life. But I gotta, of course, talk about the kidnapping sequence with Tulip. It's really interesting how, you know, she chains him up in this house. Or was that his house? I think it was, yeah, because, okay. I don't know what I was thinking. What is wrong with me? I am so good at missing, like, very random basic details. Like, I will notice something that maybe nobody else sees. And then I'll be like, where were they when this thing happened? And just, like, basic details. I'm not great. But anyway, so she traps Jesse and locks him up, you know, and she keeps telling him, hey, there's nothing keeping you here. It's as if to mock him, the idea that he is choosing his life, that he is choosing his course, that he is doing the right thing. She will do everything to undermine that concept and what she believes is ultimately a total lie and a total sham. And then she tries to tantalize him by saying that, you know, she's got the map and she's going to hand it over to Donnie and his clients are going to give him some information. Who knows what it all means? Jesse very emphatically insists that he does not care, but there shall come a point in time inevitably where I think the care is going to start kicking in. But yeah, not to be forgotten is the final scene with Linus, where he it's kind of this reverse baptism where instead of gently lowering these people, the members of the congregation, into the water, he is forcing this man face first. So it's kind of cool to see how the show is subverting I I don't know if you want to call it a trope, or rather a tradition, something that is meant to symbolize faith. And and then that ultimately, as he insists, forget her, and this man says he can't, and then all of a sudden it all snaps, and Jesse is just completely broken. It's confusing for him because he wants to relish this violence. I mean, you can tell that it's what he desires and really kind of lives for. But now all of a sudden he can speak these things into happening, and it completely turns his world upside down. So the implications of that we are going to explore. If there's anything big that I missed. Oh yeah, and the part where Eugene was talking about how the baptism didn't work, and how he feels like he's just staying the same. That also drives the point home, of course, that Jesse is fundamentally the same person that he used to be, and he keeps trying to deny it. And yeah, very consistent themes throughout the episode. Very good stuff. I'm super into it. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this review. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And I will, of course, be back before you know it.